What about Mark Skaife? What will today have in store for him as we take a look at the Fuso grid and we run you through all 30 cars? Tander starting alongside Rick Kelly. Of course, when you finish first, you start on pole position for race 2. There's that battle that we talked about, Skaife and Loundes. They had an enthralling battle yesterday. A lot of fun going on there between those two guys. And Jim Beam Racing, as Neil Crompton told you with Dick Johnson earlier on in the day, really have reason to smile. So Jamie Wincup and Greg Murphy, positions number 7 and 8. Jamie Wincup made up 2 positions. And as we go back to the top 10, Mark Winterbottom gained 5 positions throughout race 1.
One fella that had a lot of pace in the car but wasn't able to show it was James Courtney. Big problem for him, remember, on Friday, off the road, 245 kilometres an hour, big rebuild overnight, recovering a little bit of a delay in the pit lane yesterday when they cross-threaded a nut and he tangled up with Stephen Richards. He's down the order in 11th.
So the top 15 got the points. Paul Morris ended up in the points for the day, and a great performance by Paul Radicic, who'll start from positions 16, 17 and 18 belong to Coulthard and Dumbrell, and here's Cam McConville and Bradley Jones.
Just backtracking for a moment, talking about Paul Dumbrell. They've had a misfire in that car all weekend in the super cheap auto Holden Commodore, and they're going into this race still with the intermittent misfire.
So Stephen Richards copped a penalty. Max Wilson was penalised for contact with John Bow, and Russell Ingall penalised for overtaking under yellow. That's why those guys are down towards the back of the grid.
And looking right towards the back of the Fuso grid, one of the bigger names will be Todd Kelly from rear of grid, position number 30 for the Holden Racing team. There he is alongside John Bow. Record-breaking starts this weekend for JB. For Todd, a really weird thing yesterday. There he is, starting on the angle. A lot of cars in front, popped a brake line in the cockpit right alongside him. No rear brakes going into turn 1, covered the floor in oil and fired off the road, obviously.
And as soon as he ended up in the dirt, he said straight back over the team radio, wasn't my fault. He wasn't trying to get out of it, he was just alerting the team straight away to the problem. So fluid all in the cockpit, so the warm-up lap is underway.
Matty, you mentioned that we are getting quite warm today. Temperature now 30-odd degrees, and I can tell you the boys in pit lane, it is a shocker. We need the sunscreen for sure. Track temperature around 34. Now, when we get to talk about tyres, the interesting thing about Wanneroo is the sandy nature of the place, and the tyres don't cycle very well around here. Now, there's 3 sets per team, 12 tyres. Out of those, they can use them after the race for practice or testing. Problem is, 90% of the tyres, once they cool down, they're embedded with sand. They go back to Dunlop, they're shredded, and they're useless.
It's always an issue, isn't it, around at Barbagallo in particular. And I mentioned there was a windy day yesterday, Neil, from the south, but I guess the biggest problem is when one car goes off, it's virtually impossible to get it back on without dumping a whole heap of sand back on the track.
That's quite correct, and you just had a shot there a moment ago looking through turn 4 at the amount of dust and rubber marble that builds up on the outside of the track. It tends to be a one-line groove, and that was one of the points I wanted to make earlier about that off where we saw Jamie Wincup down at turn 6 earlier when we were looking at the track facts, that if you come out of the groove on this racetrack, there's very little grip available to you. Interesting that Roland Dane was just on the radio to both his drivers saying, I don't want to see you cycling, scrubbing, mucking around with the tyres in this warm-up lap. Just drive around gently, and when you come around to the line, let's go from there. Lots of different teams and drivers and engineers have their own approach to how they like to get started. That wind that you talked about, incidentally, is a northeasterly, but it's going to gust up to as much as 40 kilometres an hour today. So each day in the running that we've had Friday, Saturday and now Sunday, we've had different wind conditions. You may not think it would influence the performance of a 1,435 kilogram car and driver, but it does.
Yesterday, the wind was going from left to right as you're looking at it. Now it's coming straight down pit lane. Tander's into position. Rick Kelly's in position. Skaife and Loundes slot in behind them. We saw a shot before the teams taking deep breaths in pit lane. It's a team sport, this one. The pilots do the work, but these guys ride it the whole way.
Very likely to see Todd running longer before he takes his compulsory pit stop to try and get clean air effect.
Back of the field, slotting into position now. 30 cars on the start grid.
Would have been the Super Cheap team looking into that misfire in the Paul Dumbrell car. We had a shot of there before.
The second race of the Big Pond 400 at Barbagallo. Tander went all the way in race 1. All clear at the back of the grid.
Green flag, green flag.
50 laps ahead of us. And we're go for race 2. Again, Tander looked good. Kelly looked good as well. Loundes has made a great move. And the Jim Beam racing car comes up alongside Mark Skaife around turn 1.
Loundes an excellent start, jumping Mark Skaife and actually threatening to even move into second position as they approach turn number 1. This is the left-hand sweeper climbing the hill, turn 4.
Single file they go through, no problem so far.
Rick Kelly was a little sideways as he came off turn 5. He's in position 2. There's Loundes, 3, Skaife. Both the DJR cars still nose to tail. Courtney was a little wide at 6.
Noticed a little bit of contact there with one of the Jim Beam cars. The second in the list.
Winterbottom's made a pretty good start. He's up the inside here of Jamie Wincup and makes an effective move.
Lap 1 complete. Tander leads us through. There's Murphy putting the pressure right on Will Davison.
0.6 of a second margin, Garth Tander to Rick Kelly at the end of the standing lap. So making good use of cold tyres, Garth Tander. The order: Tander, Rick Kelly, Loundes, Skaife, Johnson, Davison, Murphy, Winterbottom, Wincup, Holdsworth. That's the 10. Then it's Courtney, Jason Richards, Radicic, Owen, Price, Morris, Dumbrell, Coulthard, Brad Jones, Cam McConville, 20th.
Here we go on board with Jamie Wincup. Heading towards 250 kilometres an hour down that back straight. On the inside, Jason Richards against his Kiwi counterpart of Paul Radicic.
Fastest lap of the race, Craig Loundes, 57.8.
Coulthard takes out Dumbrell, or takes the position off Dumbrell.
Gap narrowed first to second at the end of the first flying lap. Now 0.35 between Garth Tander and Rick Kelly. There's the margin.
The big pond in-car camera on Rick Kelly down around Cold Corner, turn 6. Pushes through the gears. Will touch 6th gear before backing it right off to turn 7. And another one's done.
That exit curb at turn 7's pretty violent. When you watch the cars down there, they actually briefly leave the road. 2 wheels off the ground. 1 car running very wide on the exit of 7. Still 0.3 of a second between Tander and Kelly. They both did 58-second even lap times. Loundes is running with them, 58 even, and Skaife ditto. Then Johnson an 8-1. Will Davison a 57.9. He's the fastest of the top 10 cars.
That's 9th, 10th and 11th you're looking at there of Wincup, Lee Holdsworth and James Courtney.
Courtney's down in 11th at the moment. Holdsworth continues to put together a great showing in the earlier model hold. Great run in Adelaide, great run yesterday. Turn 7, that's Courtney. Jason Richards involved in that freak accident on Friday where he moved to the right of Jason Bright.
Softer your rear when you've got time. Softer you've got time.
Ludo Lacroix, engineer for Jamie Wincup, suggesting he makes a change to the rear anti-roll bar. Brad Jones here getting all crossed up. Zinger replay. And that was the reason for the scramble there. Stephen Richards was trying to make a gain out of it as well.
And Paul Dumbrell was the victim of that one. Look at him go wide, wide, wide on the Zinger replay at turn 7.
Gaps down again between Tander and Kelly. Remember, they'll jump off 2 of these tyres when the compulsory pit stop window opens at 17. Winterbottom looks racy. He's got some pace in that car. He's 8th at the moment. Fastest lap of the race still Craig Loundes at 57.8. 0.39 of a second now, first to second. Tander, Kelly, Loundes. Here's Murphy and Winterbottom. These guys are disputing 7th and 8th.
Mark Winterbottom qualified 15th for race 1, ended up in 10th position. Put 8 championship points in the bank to be 10th in the series.
Mark Winterbottom is certainly looking racy, isn't he, guys? I had a good chat to his engineer about what changes they've made between races 1 and 2, and it's definitely all in the braking department at the moment. It wasn't a temperature issue that was really affecting it under brakes yesterday, although temperatures do get up to around the 800-degree mark. It was more of a compound thing. They've refined the package. He's racy, he's quick. They believe this is a top 3 car.
It was interesting observing from Mark Skaife's car, looking forward at Craig Loundes on the exit of turn 6, having to slide the car up the hill. Mark will see that. He'll see that and he'll prey on it. He's closed the margin ever so slightly. New fastest lap of the race, Tander, 57.79, and he's got just over half a second margin to his teammate Rick Kelly, and Skaife's buying into this battle as well. Third gear, turn 4, short shift to 4th. Don't use all the revs, then squeeze the throttle over the brow on the sawtooth curve. 5th gear, just on 215 k's on the braking approach, then about 115 k's across the middle of turn 6. See, Loundes uses more exit space. Skaife catches a bit of oversteer. Car slides. He's got a better corner exit speed. See him making a little bit of ground. 6th. Huge uphill break. He's right in the draft now of the Ford. Nose to tail at the final corner. Nice and neutral on the exit, no sliding. He'll have a look down here at 1.
Thinks twice, hard on the brakes. Right up to 252 k's. He got down the back of that back straight. And this is great to see these two guys going at it again.
Where Skaife will be strong again is when they come off turn 6. This is 4. And he'll be looking to see whether Craig's car gets sideways and trying to make a shallower exit, get the 100% throttle in earlier, and then Craig could be vulnerable then down at 7 or turn 1. Here's turn 6. Let's watch this. 2 very different approaches in their driving styles. Mark will come out shallower, Craig up higher and wider. See how wide Craig is? But the Loundes car much straighter on that occasion. Might have made a little anti-roll bar adjustment in the car. Still not quite close enough. There's a little bit of oversteer from the Loundes car. It's the detail you see from the driver's seat.
It's taken through turn 1.
I think Winterbottom is having another nibble there at Murphy. Oh, a little moment there. That's the sort of thing that Skaife can see quite clearly, just like you can at home. And when he sees those little moments that his old teammate's having, he knows that he can apply pressure.
I guess the question is, Neil, when?
Just got to be a bit patient. See, Craig slides again onto the sawtooth ripple strip at 5. Has a look at 6 under him. Done earlier than we thought.
There's the answer to win at turn 6, and Mark Skaife picks up position number 3. A repeat of what happened in race 1.
Brought about by the sliding through turns 4 and 5, particularly slower on the exit for Craig. So Skaife through now to position 3, but a fair margin up the road to the Toll HSV cars. You can see it there.
Good job, mate.
Rob Starr, voice on the radio. And Winterbottom did get Greg Murphy, so he's up to 7 now.
There's Wincup.
9th, Holdsworth 10th, Courtney, Jason Richards, Radisish there. Bit of a margin back to Owen.
Fabian Coulthard and Cam McConville go through. Dumbrill, there's Russell Engel, and look at Todd Kelly. Sneaks in. Fingernail stuff between him and Stephen Richards.
21st and 22nd. They'll have worked their backsides off. They've still got a lot of cars in front of them.
The man who led the championship after our first round of the Clipsal 500, Todd Kelly, finds himself way back. But he's looking to make some moves. The HRT number 22 car had a rotten day. in race 1 here at Barbagallo. Your Xbox 360 leaderboard shows that Tander continues to lead the way. Johnson and Davison doing a great job for Dick Johnson Racing. Mark Winterbottom in 7th. Lee Holdsworth holding down position 10. The Toll HSV dealer team continues to go 1-2, or more correctly, 16-1. 16 is Tander, 1 is Rick Kelly. And these guys are making the most of the clean air in front of them. On the inside, we've got car 17, and he gets him, Will Davison.
Yeah, Loundes is sliding too much, and he'll have a go at this as well. So Johnson through, and in the previous half lap, Loundes has just been losing a 10th here or there, and Winterbottom's well in this game. Voice of Craig Loundes.
Yeah, and look at Will Davison there in car 18, just waiting to have a crack at it as well. It's remarkable, isn't it, Neil, how when one bloke gets past another bloke, there's always 2 or 3 others who want to have a crack as well.
You can almost see the amount of roll in the front of Craig Loundes' car. They've probably been searching for front grip in the car. They've softened it off, perhaps, to try and find some grip, but it's climbing over its own nose. Look at the amount of roll in the front of it relative to the other cars around it. And as the car climbs over itself, it gets a diagonal slide going. And it's just making him a bit vulnerable coming off several of the corners.
And it's what happened in race 1 here. Now let's take a look and see if Davison doesn't have the room. Campbell Little and Roland Dane at Team Vodafone. And
it mustn't have enough adjustment in the anti-roll bars to be able to correct the problem.
Settled itself down in race 1, didn't it? Because this was the same for Craig Loundes yesterday. He was under attack, and then it settled down, but it is worse today.
It's definitely worse today, and that's what happens sometimes. You try and make considered judgments in your approach to changing the engineering on the car to find more speed for the second day, and you know, subsequently even the third race. Sometimes you just tickle it the wrong way. And you know, if we knew the technical details, it'd be such a tiny thing that can sometimes just change the cars in the wrong direction. Only need to lose half a tenth or a tenth a lap and you can be vulnerable.
24-year-old from the Gold Coast, Davison, finished 9th in round 1. Finished 6th here yesterday.
Loundes just off the road on the exit again of turn 6. The visual clues here to all this, and will have a crack at him down here under brakes. As soon as you see a queue forming behind anybody, you know that that driver's in trouble. Craig's got a queue forming. Winterbottom will buy into this as well. He'll end up getting spat out by Winterbottom and possibly even Murphy. Back he goes. Whoop.
Contact there between, well, all 3 of them, and in the end,
Craig won't give up in a hurry. He's a great race driver with a lot of fight and a lot of racecraft in there. So even if he has a little handling deficiency in the car, he'll find a way. So crisscross move there for Loundes. And Davison fell for it, breaking deep into 7. Margin first to second, still only just half a second. Good comeback for this young bloke. Tough weekend for Ford Performance Racing. An engine change when they didn't need the problem. And then the dramas that Grant detailed.
Campbell, suffering, stay with 3. Tell me when we can early stop.
Mate, just see what you can do. Yeah, we'll let you know as soon as we can. We're on lap 13 now.
And so Craig's saying, look, I'm out of adjustment. I'm out of tricks. Let me come in as soon as I'm able on lap 17, and they'll make a roll centre adjustment on the rear of that car to change the rear suspension behaviour and try and improve him for the back end of the race.
That's exactly right, Neil. All the cards have been pulled out of Craig's sleeve right now. He is out of tyres in the rear end, particularly the changes they made between 1 and 2 haven't quite paid dividends, as they hope they are going to bring him in as soon as humanly possible to whack some new tyres on the rear and hope that that cures an immediate problem. But Loundes is certainly struggling, and a few furrowed brows here in the garage.
So Stephen Johnson has 4th. Our leaders, Tander and Rick Kelly. Mark Skaife is 3rd. And at the moment, further back, it's all about defence for Craig Loundes.
So the interesting question will be with Loundes, will there their ills be cured by purely tyres, or will they need to make a little change to the car and sacrifice another half second in the stop? Look at Will down the inside and sneaks through. Job done. Craig's now high and wide in the dirty stuff, and that's a big incentive for Mark Winterbottom.
Will Davison got it before, lost it and got it again. Now he's in front of Craig Loundes. The Xbox 360 leaderboard has Garth Tander still out in front of his teammate Rick Kelly and Mark Skaife. Stephen Johnson is in fourth. You'll see that Loundes there is in fifth, but actually Davison has flip-flopped him on that. Mark Winterbottom in seventh. Eighth belongs to Greg Murphy and Jamie Wincup. And then down to 10th of Lee Holdsworth. You're looking at a man under maximum pressure. Craig Loundes, the Team Vodafone 888 Falcon, has given up position number 5, and Mark Winterbottom wants it as well. Behind him is Greg Murphy. They're looking for the pit window to open.
Yes, lap 17. So any tick of the clock, the pit lane will erupt, and you can expect that the Vodafone team will bring Loundes in as quickly as they're able to try and see whether or not they can give him a little burst of speed that he needs. He's vulnerable at the moment. He's using every last millimetre of the road, just looks a bit uncomfortable. And Winterbottom's got more car speed, but he doesn't have track position, and Craig's a wake-up. He only has to position the car 6 inches either way, and it's just enough disincentive to make it hard for him. Watch this.
Does he get him? Does he get him? He doesn't. It's a defensive driver course. Class number 1 by Craig Loundes.
Craig's braking so deep down there, he's actually struggling to make the apex, that is the inside of the turn, and he uses the concrete ripple strip as a berm like you're riding a dirt bike. He rides up and over it, sacrifices a little bit of race line to try and keep the rolling speed of the car up.
Meanwhile, Murphy and Winterbottom are having their own scrap.
That was Phil Keed from Ford Performance Racing, just having a look on the pit wall. What he'll be doing is assessing the traffic. He's getting a bit of a visual. Loundes, and he's okay. Getting a bit of a visual on what's going on out there so that he can see where to pit Mark and how that might affect them. So fully expect that Loundes will be in this time. And actually, I've just heard Phil Keed say pit this lap for his guys as well. I think he's managing Stephen Richards. So down the inside for Winterbottom, job done, but Loundes will yield anyway because he's off to the lane.
Okay, mate, I've got you. Watch your speed.
Exactly. Take a look at the exit there, at the entry rather than pit lane.
Voice of Kevin May.
CPS light off.
He's car controller for Loundes.
Okay, mate, wait, go. Pit lane's clear. Watch your speed.
Roll centre adjusters on the other side of the car, so I'm not sure whether they did in fact make a change.
Pretty sure they did. I saw somebody sneak in there while they were... I mean, there's just a fraction of time.
Be on a reasonably clear track, so you just need to...
Okay, we do. Good work, mate. CPS light off. CPS light off.
Radicic comes out. Todd Kelly comes out there. Stephen Richards and Max Wilson.
Bit of aggravation yesterday in the pit lane. It's a tight one here. Max Wilson in between both the Toll HSV dealer team cars. It's still a very tight margin between both of those guys. It's narrowed up again. Frustration for Wilson being assessed that penalty for the infringement of the driving code with John Bowe at turn 7 in race 1 yesterday. Otherwise a strong showing. Position 11 for the WOW entry. So Phil Keed was looking there before at where he could pit Stephen Richards. Here's Mark Winterbottom.
CPS light off. Good work, mate.
Nice clear air around those fellas. McConville. Winterbottom's in the weeds out there looking for grip, but he's in front of Loundes. So strategic manoeuvre there from FPR to get that job done. So makes good the manoeuvre that he pulled. Earlier contact, Stephen Richards on Cam McConville.
Both of them came towards turn 1. McConville coming out of pit lane. Richards Coming right around at full speed.
Around by Repco, big time.
To answer your question a little earlier on of what sort of answers does Craig Loundes have about his car, there were no roll center changes, just rear tyres. I think they're hoping there is a little bit more of a breath in what he's got underneath him right now in the back end.
Okay, away you go to the lane split.
Both Team Vodafone cars have done their stops.
So it could just have
Rear
been...
bar Steve to 9. Rear bar to 9, please.
So full hard on the rear anti-roll bar for Jamie Wincup, searching for turn while the tyres have good drive in them. So the tyre condition for Loundes could be the answer here. The fresh set of tyres might cure the problems, or, Matthew, they may make a little variation in their tyre pressures. So clearly they're happy with the balance of the car in its own right, but they believe that tyres are going to hold the answers. That's Courtney in the background. We understand that Tander is due in.
Perfect.
Get ready for Rick. Get ready for Rick.
Drivers see the
Clear, mate, clear.
blue flag. They're indicating there's traffic as they rejoin.
Precision timing now. They're ready for Rick. They barely have time to breathe before he comes back in.
Car 88, Jamie Wincup, pit lane drive-through penalty. Wincup didn't have the speed limiter on.
Clear, go. Flip that close.
Up again, guys.
So he didn't have the pit lane speed limiter on. That's funny, when I heard the car leave the lane, a little flag went up in my mind and I thought, gee, it came out of there cleanly with a lot of revs. So that's been observed, and the officials know that the CPS, the pit lane speed limiter is on because the tail light, the high intensity tail light flashes at the rear.
Stephen Johnson's in, Rick Kelly.
Go.
Back-to-back stops for Toll HSV, and Garth Tander goes around and Rick Kelly rejoins right behind him.
I think that margin opened between the orange cars, and Stephen Johnson's done a good job there as well. He's well positioned. Skaife is still out though, yet to do his stop. Could well fill that gap when he's processed. And Matt Nilsson has just urged Garth Tander to get on the job because Skaife's still out making gains in clean air, and this is the drive-through penalty for Jamie Wincup for not engaging the pit lane speed limiter in the lane.
Race again.
Skaife.
Go.
Very, very slick stop there.
Question is, where does he slot in? So here comes Tander, then Kelly. Skaife will come out in third position. Stephen Johnson is now in fourth. Will Davison fifth. Winterbottom is sixth. And Craig Loundes in seventh.
Jack Perkins is in an animated radio discussion with his crew at the moment about the adjustment of the rear roll centre on his car. He's learning the ropes in the trade. He's 22nd at the moment. I don't think they quite adjusted it how he envisaged. Tander, Kelly, Skaife, Johnson, Davison. The Jim Beam car still performing very well. Winterbottom, Loundes. Will he be stronger now on this other tyre set? Holdsworth supplying the pressure. Those guys are disputing 7th, 8th and Murphy 9th at the moment.
The Xbox 360 leaderboard. Now that they've pitted, Garth Tander, Rick Kelly and Mark Skaife resume the battle. Stephen Johnson is there in fourth. Fifth, Will Davison. Mark Winterbottom 6th. Craig Loundes is 7th. And you can see that Lee Holdsworth and Greg Murphy are sweating on him. We're back at Barbagallo for the Big Pond 400. This is race 2. of a 3-race weekend. Tander was our first race winner yesterday. He started on pole position. He was quickest in practice, and here he goes again at the halfway mark. So he's been warned that there's a slow car around at turn 3.
The investigating and prosecuting officer is also investigating. Oh, it was Wincup that must have been off the road. An incident between Paul Morris in 67 and Stephen Richards in 6. Apparently the potential for an unsafe release by car 67. The fight back from Todd Kelly's a good one. He's 15th. He's now in the points from the very last row of this field. And he went into the race still second in the championship. Wincup, not a good weekend so far.
It's unravelled in a snowballing manner for Jamie Wincup. The drive through, he did go off at turn 3, and now he's trying to fight his way back, but there's not a lot of positions for him to make up, as you can see out the front of the Team Vodafone Falcon.
Look at this. Kelly, just mentioned him. Car 22, position 15. He's in front of Shane Price. He's chasing down Paul Radisich and Jason Richards, and that gets him some of these valuable points that are fewer.
24 laps remaining, Todd. 24 laps. Pace is pretty good, mate.
Matthew Crawford, his engineer, on the radio. So there's not as many points to go around in 2007, as we've mentioned many, many times. And so just getting some points at the moment, pretty valuable for him. It's only 2 of them I might mention, but it's better than nothing.
Just had a word to Steve Brow, the category technical manager, who explained the Wincup scenario. He observed the fact that the light on the rear flashing when it indicates that the pit lane speed limiter is on was not working. It was not engaged. He also heard the car. You said it shot out of the pit bay pretty quickly there, Neil. You're right. Steve observed about 6,000 revs to his tuned ear, suggesting that it wasn't active at all. The team has explained that there is a problem with the car, although that when Jamie came through and observed the drive-through penalty, it all of a sudden was working. So although he has served the term, they will investigate after the race.
And they can do that, Grant, because the onboard data recorder that Tiga provides, the Touring Car Entrance Group, will have the answers in there, and they'll be able to look at that data and interrogate that and find out what the story was. So he infringed the 40km/h pit lane speed limit, and that's electronically controlled by a little button on the steering wheel. Whether it was on or off is something they'll argue about later, or whether they had another technical fault. But certainly when he came out of the pit stop service period, it just sounded like he was able to bring on plenty of revs and roar out. Now there's been another incident in the pit lane. The IPO's investigating an issue between car 3, Jason Richards, and car number 7 for an unsafe release by car 7, Shane Price. So that's another one that the stewards will take a look at.
Well, Lee Holdsworth for Gary Rogers Motorsports doing a great job out there, sitting in 8th spot at the moment, but Gary Rogers is just a bit concerned that how he might go mixing it with Craig Lowndes and Greg Murphy, sort of wedged between the 2 of them at the moment. So this will be a real test of racecraft for Lee Holdsworth.
It's a good point, Mark, because when experience stacks up, you've got Lowndes, who's having his 125th championship start, Murphy having his 117th, and Lee Holdsworth having his 21st. He's sandwiched in between 2 guys who have been there and done that. And I think already this year, Lee Holdsworth has showed that he's been asked to step up, and he's willing to do so for Gary Rogers Motorsport. And there's Gary there, looking on. Car 33 in position 8, and Dean Canto back in position number 28 in car 34. So 20 laps to go of race 2. Tander out in front has a half a second lead over Rick Kelly.
Stephen Johnson and Will Davison are both making a little bit of ground on the lead group as well. In fact, Johnson's getting fractionally closer to the back of Mark Skaife. This is a great battle, this one, with these 4 cars. Very intense. Nothing wrong with the job that Lee Holdsworth is doing at the moment. And there's that gap that I spoke about. Mark Skaife to Stephen Johnson. They're exiting turn 6, cresting the peak of the hill. And the run down to the final corner here. And Stephen is definitely starting to get millimetre closer.
Neil, you mentioned earlier that the IPO having a look at an incident between the Tasman Motorsport cars and Perkins. I've just spoken to Darren Tate, the car controller at Tasman. He says there was no issue here, but they did get tangled up with the Perkins cars later, so it'll be interesting to see what the result will be.
58-1 for Garth Tander, 58-2 for Rick Kelly.
20 to go.
58 even for Skaife, 8-1 Stephen Johnson, 7-9 Will Davison, 8-2 Winterbottom, 8-7 Loundes, 8-7 Murphy, 8-7 Courtney. But remember, they're in a battle that's tangling them up a little.
Let's jump on board with Mark Skaife. And the telemetry will show you just how busy it is around this circuit. Up over the rise on turn 6. Watch the speed that he carries down towards turn 7.
Little glimpse in the rearview mirror, watching the shift lights on the steering wheel. Just a whisker under 250 Ks, firmly on the brakes. One of the biggest pushes of the brake pedal in the season. Third gear, ride the berm, fourth, flat shifting. Briefly in fifth on the pit straight, turn 1 and back to third gear. And you wait, carry the brake a bit here. Patience is the word at turn 1. Fourth gear, turns 2 and 3, the high-speed S's, and you kind of float the throttle back to third for turn 4. A little pause, and the re-hit of the throttle there is just waiting for the front grip to come on. Fourth gear, float the car, and nice and neutral. See, there's no sliding in at all. Fifth, now the run down the hill, a little bump, back to third for turn 6. The throttle, just waiting for front grip to come on. 115 odd Ks at the apex. Fourth, fifth, use the concrete apron on the left. Briefly in sixth. Someone's off the road here on the exit of 7.
Good job, mate.
It's a rhythm in the race car, and each track has its own song.
This will be the incident, the Singer replay. So James Courtney moves inside Lee Holdsworth and gets him. And that is for position 9. So Holdsworth drops back to 10. And now we'll see who went off at turn 7. It's one of the Team BOC cars, just couldn't find the turn.
He was in the...
Stuck on the left-hand side. And it is Bradley Jones.
Couldn't
Yes,
get it turned in. There's no grip out there off the race line. Margins narrowing here between Rick Kelly and his teammate Garth Tander. Last time through it was officially 0.4. It's less than that now.
So Garth Tander has had it all his own way. Pretty much since qualifying here, the Xbox 360 leaderboard shows that he leads Rick Kelly, but that margin is closing. And there's only about 15 laps to go. Race 2 of the Big Pond 400 at Barbagallo. You're watching the V8 Supercar Championship on 7. Welcome back. Rick Kelly is constantly having a look at Garth Tander, but Garth Tander is constantly answering the question.
Black flag for car 67, Paul Morris. Unsafe release in pit lane during the compulsory pit stop. So expect to see Morris take the lane very shortly. And that's Eric Pender talking to his driver Rick Kelly, and that's his dad John watching on from the Toll HSV pit.
He saw one son finish on the podium yesterday with second position, the other in line as well for a good finish, but Todd ended up off the track at turn 1. But these guys definitely been the ones to catch. Tander showed us in Adelaide that he had the speed. Rick Kelly obviously finished with the round victory, but Garth Tander had a pit lane infringement. That put a close to his weekend, and here's Mark Skaife with Stephen Johnson on his hammer.
just having a look at the times that Jamie Wincup's now doing for the Triple Eight fans. 58.2s he's now circulating in. Just to show you how tight this racetrack is here at Barbagallo, he's now in 28th. The time is actually good enough to have him in 9th place. Of course, it's just a matter of getting past those guys, which is no mean feat at a short circuit like this.
It's bizarre, isn't it? You can actually see what less than a half a second looks like. Now, Todd Kelly on the Zinger replay will have a move on Paul Radicic, and he will get him. So Todd Kelly, who started way back at the end of the grid after having a DNF yesterday, has now moved up into 14th position.
That's 3 points.
Well, that's 3 more than he got yesterday.
Exactly. He was pretty disappointed yesterday when I caught up with him in the paddock after such an outstanding showing in Adelaide and in a competitive position in that great race with Craig Lowndes yesterday, and then off the road, no points. Still protecting his second in the championship to his brother. This is a great pressure battle between the two teammates here as we go on board with Rick Kelly. Show you all the angles. Foot cam. And modulating, carrying the brake pedal all the way through, almost halfway through turn 1, keeping grip in the front of the car. And then watch how gently you apply throttle here at this racetrack. Now they're coming in for third gear, turn 4. Wait with the throttle and then squeeze. Little short shift means you don't use all of the revs. 4th and then flat shifting all the way down the hill in 5th. Double shuffle. Looking for smooth downshifts to try and look after that 6-speed gearbox. Turn 6, again, a lot of patience with the throttle and then flat shifting all the way up and down the hill. Check the instrumentation, little safety tap to make sure there's pedal pressure there so that the brake balance is right when you go for the brake pedal into turn 7. Little drink, a think.
1 point forward to Skaife, patient with the traffic.
And a bit of coaching from Eric Pender in your ears while you're at it. And whilst all that fancy footwork was going on, Rick actually went underneath one of the Team BOC cars. And I made the point before that it's a rhythm that you become very much in sync with your race car and the racetrack, and you can feel tiniest variations in its tyre grip performance, in its balance, in its engine performance. Skaife passing one of the Team BOC cars as well, just moving off to the right to stay out of the way of the lead group.
And you know, watching that foot dance of Rick Kelly there makes you feel for Paul Radicic, who's inside the points now in 13th position. The bloke struggling walking up and down pit lane. He had to do 50 laps like that yesterday, and he was hurting at the end of it.
The margin's sort of stabilised now between Skaife and Johnson, but Stephen's teammate Will Davison is not too far behind. He's doing a good job there in the second of the Jim Beam cars. There's the margin back to Mark Winterbottom 6th, and then daylight to Greg Murphy coming onto the pit straight.
Boys, we heard the radio chat calling for car 67 to observe a drive-through for the pit lane infringement. The car controller and, in fact, the whole Cirromate teams, I'll tell you, I cannot repeat what they're saying, but they're bitterly unhappy about what's going on. A lot of head shaking and furrowed brows here in the Cirromate pit.
Don't think anybody's ever celebrated a drive-through that I can recall, even when they're about as guilty as they can possibly get. It can possibly be.
It's the who me, sir.
Yeah, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. But no, it is very frustrating. The people that work in these crews, the guys that are driving the cars, give their heart and soul 150% of the time. And when they drop a second, let alone 23 of them, it's a very painful thing.
I'm buried deep inside the Dick Johnson racing outfit at the moment, and you won't believe the faces down here. You'd think that they'd be jumping up and cheering, looking at their two boys in 4th and 5th place, and Stephen Johnson climbing on the back of Mark Skaife. But the nerves, they are so quiet. You've only got to remember that December last year, almost that late, that they had there were big question marks as to whether this team would ever return to Australian racetracks. The oldest team in Australia is now celebrating some of the best results they've received in about 5 to 7 years. This is good news, and they believe that Stephen Johnson has a superior brake package over Mark Skaife.
That'll be put to the test, no question.
Courtney is slowly getting a little closer here to the back of Craig Lowndes. Here's another good move on the Zinger replay. Todd Kelly down the inside, this time of the Autobahn Steve Owen entry. That's Radicic in the background, and Kelly now moves to position 11, 6 points to his name.
He means you're frugal on those points, aren't you? You don't give them away very easily. And when you do, there's not many of them. Xbox 360 leaderboard. Garth Tander and Rick Kelly as we take a look at James Courtney and Craig Loundes. As Neil mentioned, Courtney's getting closer and closer. So the battle at the rear of the top 10 is starting to get pretty exciting as we head towards 10 laps to go of the Big Pond 400 Race 2. Craig Loundes in the 888 Team Vodafone Falcon has position 8. Don't forget, for all your favourite sports, including V8 Supercars live and on demand, that is your website, bigpondsport.com. Check it out. But James Courtney is checking out Craig Loundes big time. Here's Garth Tander, who continues to have a 0.7 of a second lead over Rick Kelly.
James made a mistake down at turn 6, locked the inside front, and you could hear the tyre squeal in the background. Also black flag for Steve Owen, car 55 for blocking. He'll serve a drive-through penalty in the Autobahn entry.
Just having a chat to Rob Starr from the Holden Racing team now. Before this race, they set a goal for Todd Kelly to make a top 10 finish. Remember, he started from the rear of the field. He is currently in 11th place. He's one spot away from achieving that goal. Super effort.
Yep, the way he's been going too. You'd have to probably bank on him, Mark, I reckon. So you saw there some lap traffic. The Team BOC Falcon was in the way in between Tander and Kelly. Kelly's got around him, and now Skaife will do so as well. But Bradley Jones. So the fight between 1, 2 and 3 is back on in earnest now. Stephen Johnson has to get past Brad.
Might only have been a flag for blocking for Steve Owen, not the drive-through at this stage. I might have jumped the gun there, but he's certainly being shown a flag. Could be the bad sportsmanship flag for not affording reasonable passage for someone rounding him up.
Neil just talking to the boys at Team Kiwi Racing. I said, how's the rat feeling? What's the radio chat been? Is he getting through the race okay? His left leg is numb. He's a very, very sore boy. It's in the second half of the race he really starts to feel the pain. I said, how's he changing gears? And they said that he's using right foot for accelerator, his right foot for brake, and right foot occasionally for a dab of the clutch. He's a busy boy.
James Courtney, we understand, could have an issue with his car. And it's, they've asked Owen off the road here. And Paul Forgey's asking Courtney to go to reserve on his fuel pumps.
That's bizarre where he's ended up.
Way off the road on the outside of turn 4. So we'll keep an eye out for Courtney and see what the issue is there. The car may have coughed. A long way off the road, Steve Owen.
Possibly stop on the track. Coming to pit here then.
Frustration. He was right under the back of Craig Loundes. He was 9th. He's now dropping right to the back of the field. Paul Forgey suggesting he might need to come to the lane. Must have some kind of a fuel pickup issue. Been a tough weekend for these guys. They copped a fine on Friday as well. $7,500 fine for a pit paddock infringement.
We can't get any power of the engine here, whether it's mechanical with the throttle or an electrical problem.
Oh, somebody else is gone. Well, Steve Owen's gone again.
Deeply buried in the sand down there.
And the tyre barriers as well.
It's probably a safety car, I should imagine, depending on where he's actually ended up and if he's okay.
So this is originally what happened on your Zinger replay to Steve Owen. Contact with Stephen Richards. Looks to be the first incident. Well, he's run wide anyway and then crisscrossed across the track. And that's where he ended up, in the middle of Nowheresville.
He was reporting on the radio, no brakes.
Okay, so he's come back down, and no brakes is not what you want to hear, because I believe that he's at the back at the very end of turn 7. Look at the pace.
Safety car, full course yellow.
Make sure all the injectors are squirting. Make sure you've got squirted all the injectors and all the plug leads are on.
Paul Forgey talking about the James Courtney stricken Ford. The Geltman car's in the lane. They're working on it now. So Steve Owen off the road. Brake failure or some brake issue there. Grant?
Yeah, the news just continues to get worse for James Courtney after his big prang on Friday. It's a pretty fair effort in qualifying with 6 to only cross-thread a wheel nut yesterday in race 1. Now he can't quite get full throttle. There seems to be a throttle pickup problem, which they're trying to amend now, but it looks like it's all over for James.
Yeah, I can see Jimmy Stone in the background signalling don't go anywhere. They've got deeper issues.
Been that kind of weekend for James Courtney. Safety car board is out. The WPS Chrysler safety car is on the circuit. And in a repeat performance of race 1, we're going to have a little bit of a nail-biting finish, I'd suggest, because there's only a handful of laps left to go. So when we restart the Xbox 360 leaderboard, we'll have Tander in front. Rick Kelly, Mark Skaife, Stephen Johnson. The top 5 is rounded out by Will Davison. Mark Winterbottom is there. Greg Murphy is amongst it. And so too is Craig Lowndes, Lee Holdsworth and Todd Kelly. We'll be back right after this. So this will squeeze the field all the way back up again and put the pressure back on the race leader, who has had it all his own way. He's copped a little bit of pressure from this man, Rick Kelly, who's been the only one who could get close to his teammate. And by my reckoning, Neil, I think the closest he got was 0.3.
Sounds about right. And it's seesawing depending on where you look. I mean, there's the number that pops up at the control line, and then there's all the other variations along the way. There's the Steve Owen Autobahn entry buried in the tyre barrier down at turn 7. It's been so incredibly dry here in Western Australia that the cars are surfing across the sand and not really losing a lot of pace. And we saw evidence of that on Friday when Courtney went off down there. It looks, when you stand down there, like it's a big runoff area. I can assure you, when you arrive down there at 250 Ks, it doesn't look so long. This is going to take at least another lap, maybe 2, and we'll probably get 2 or 3 green laps to the flag then.
Well, the good news is that Steve is out of the car.
That's a serious tow truck with a rear wing on it. I reckon the aero balance on it might be a bit average. It could understeer at anything over 15 kilometres an hour.
The thing is, it looks good.
I'll bet that didn't come from the Ferrari wind tunnel either. So they'll slow the pace of the safety car right down here, the WPS Chrysler safety car, down to a walking pace, because if they can extract the car whilst the speed's reduced, they won't have to do that extra lap. They may be able to get on with the racing. The danger here for the drivers, tyres ever so gently cool out, the pressures go down, the car wriggles around more when you restart the race, and the cars are all bunched up. Mix that together and you've got a little potential there for a bit of aggravation.
See how the rear wing's going on the tow.
Not good to see anybody go off the road at high speed. We understand that Steve's obviously out of harm's way there and okay, but certainly a spooky incident. Started like this. Zinger replay tells the story. Stephen Richards, Steve Owen side by side, turns 2 and 3. And on the dirty line there, look, there's no grip at all for Steve Owen. So he does a little motocross ride across the bumps and out into the paddock. And then whatever happened out there has triggered some other mechanical issue, and he's ended up with no brakes down at turn 7. Zinger replay from the other angle. And just really underscores the fact that when you're off the race line here, Matthew, then you've got absolutely no grip at all. And we suspect probably a brake line. So the car's right out of harm's way now.
Which is almost, that's almost where he ended up in the first instance.
With the Wacky Racers tow truck. And but that was a good job by the recovery team down there, because we haven't spent as much time under yellow as we might otherwise have.
We're back at Barbagallo, and the first sprint round of 2007 will have a sprint finish for race 2 here at the Big Pond 400. The Zinger replay will piece together what happened to Steve Owen against Stephen Richards here. There was contact, and by now Steve Owen has lost total control of the Autobahn entry. That could have been really bad for both drivers, and as I said before, he ended up over the hill and out in the middle of nowhere.
Matthew, it was during that time when he turned it into the most expensive lawnmower we've seen this weekend at Barbagallo that the team actually think he has knocked off a brake line just in that off-roading exit. And of course, that's prompted the exit and the speedy exit. It was at a massive speed at turn 7.
Yeah, well, thankfully, Steve Owen is okay, Daniel. He's been taken out of that car. The car has now been removed off the track. The WPS safety car will peel away and we'll be ready for a restart. So
the lights are out on the roof, which indicates to the drivers following that we'll go racing when they cross the control line.
And a good job by the recovery team to get Steve Owen and his car both out of harm's way.
They must stay single file and not overlap at the control line. You see a lot of penalties here and there as drivers jump the gun too early on the restarts.
And it's back on again. Can Garth Tander hold on? He's been doing it all the way. But now it's a different story because they're lined up behind him, but Garth Tander already has shot away from Rick Kelly. There's Skaife in third. Traffic everywhere now. So the deal here is to get out into as much clean air as you can and keep it. There's not a long way to go. Just a couple of laps. Car 34 of Dean Canto. There's Stephen Johnson and Will Davison.
And Canto and Jack Perkins are one lap down in the queue here. So this little battle here on the inside is the critical one. It's between both the Jim Beam cars of Stephen Johnson and Will Davison. And the other man to watch here is Mark Winterbottom Murphy in there. So plenty to focus on in this group.
Murphy tried to have a look at Mark Winterbottom, but he couldn't get him for position 6. So they go across. Tander leads us. Rick Kelly, Mark Skaife, Johnson and Davison, Winterbottom and Murphy. Brad Jones caught on the outside of turn 1. Paul Radicic is up to 11th position. What about Todd Kelly? Started at the back, he's in 10th.
Todd Kelly just had to run very wide through the turn 3 S's there onto the dirty line to round up one of the Jack Daniels cars. He's up to 10th, 8 points. Great recovery from the very back of the field.
Loundes is throwing it around. He's in 8th position. But out in front, Garth Tander is just having one of those weekends where everything falls into place.
Tander very good on the restart when the tyres have cooled out. He's in very good shape.
Right, mate.
Garth Tander
boys. Well done.
makes it 2 out of 2.
We got on the car for that one. That's an awesome method.
That's a little clue there that they used the scruffier tyre set and they're keeping their good tyres for both segments of race 3. So that gives us a little clue as to how they did it all. Look at that. It's a serious traffic jam.
They're all trying to hit the tape together, but Tander does it ahead of everybody else again. From quickest in practice, from pole position to position 1 in race 1, and now he's doubled up in race 2. And there's Rick Kelly, who gets second behind his teammate for the second time this weekend. Mark Skaife, great job, third.
And fastest lap of the race again for Garth Tander at 57.79.
So Garth Tander now has maximum points so far. He's got 48 points for the weekend. 24 per race winner. There's our results. Tander, Kelly, Skaife, Johnson and Davison. Of course, they're provisional. We know that. And we learnt that lesson yesterday. Mark Winterbottom in 6th. Greg Murphy there in 7th. Craig Loundes, Lee Holdsworth and Todd Kelly in position number 10. So making amends to what happened to Todd Kelly yesterday when he finished without the points. Now he's got 8 points for the weekend. Paul Radicic continues to show us that he is made of the right stuff, because this has been a long, hard weekend for him, and he's looking forward to Pukekohe. Jason Bargwanna in 22nd position. Down to Cam McConville, Dean Canto. You can see Bradley and Andrew Jones had their problems. And James Courtney and Steve Owen, our two drivers who didn't finish race 2 of the Big Pond 400. But once again, Tander will come out, jump out of car number 16 and say to himself, this is the kind of place I want to be.